Hey, DawgNation, it's Brandon Adams, the host of DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. And, you know, we don't get too many moments like this in life, and I hope that you're like me, both looking ahead to Monday, the national championship, but also soaking in these next couple days as well. Here on this Friday as we record this show, Saturday and Sunday, the way that all of DawgNation is all just sort of united as one, everybody dressed in red and black, everybody having a good time, everybody anticipating the big moment. Soak in this part, too, because this is truly a special ride. Cannot wait to talk to you about it all next as DawgNation Daily begins right now.
Presented by DawgNation.com, this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
Y'all, Georgia plays for a national championship on Monday. Can you believe that? I mean, isn't it just even fun to say that out loud? That this wild ride that Georgia's been on all season long, and the great moments, the entertaining road trips, the special times that we've all kind of shared together throughout all of this, it actually comes to the biggest and best moment of all in Mercedes-Benz Stadium on Monday with the College Football Playoff National Championship game. We're going to talk about a lot of that here on today's show. By the way, also later on, Jeff Sentell makes a triumphant return to DawgNation Daily. We have not had Jeff on the show in what feels like about 10 years. It seems that way anyway. I'm actually really excited about talking to my buddy Jeff today. We'll get into some of the All-Star Game stuff from Orlando last night, what's going to happen in San Antonio this weekend. So we'll do a lot of that with Jeff Sentell here in just a little bit. Before any of that, though, looks like Alabama's trying to dial up the intensity here. Looks like Alabama's trying to raise the stakes for its national championship showdown with Georgia, and it's doing it in a way that it's done now for quite some time, utilizing the motivational skills of the strength and conditioning coach, Scott Cochran, who's universally thought to be one of the best in the industry when it comes to this kind of thing, and the day job, if you will, of making the players stronger and faster and better. Scott Cochran, as captured on video. Now, I guess my understanding is he did this in the Alabama locker room. Jerry Jeudy, the Alabama wide receiver, videoed it. Maybe regretted the fact that it got out there, or somebody thought better of this. It was then deleted. Deadspin caught it. I guess the Barstool Sports site also caught it as well. If you're not watching us on video, if you're listening to us on podcast, I'll describe what you're seeing here in what I believe is GIF form. It's Scott Cochran, the strength and conditioning coach, over and over again, smashing last year's national runner-up trophy. The symbolism here is obvious, that Alabama doesn't care anything about second place finishes, that second place is nothing. So much so that the trophy, and by the way, I didn't know they gave a trophy out for a second place, but if you were saw that trophy, it's like the big numbers 2017, kind of in that college football playoff font, and in all of that, Scott Cochran just sort of slams that down, smashes that, and says, we don't care about second place. That's not what we're playing for on Monday night against the Georgia Bulldogs. And maybe in the past, something like that would have worked. There is no doubt in the past when Georgia and Alabama have played in games of this magnitude, and they've never played on quite as big a stage, but they have played on big stages before. And in the past, when these teams have gotten together, I mean, let's just face it, let's just be honest. There is a certain truth, and then it just sort of seems like Alabama has had the mental edge. Alabama has somehow had some sort of extra level of motivation, extra level of competitive fire, that things like Scott Cochran, and we know of the Cochran story because Mike Johnson, my partner from AT&T SEC Country Live, might count Scott Cochran as a good friend and a big-time part of his success at Alabama. We know that Scott Cochran's been doing these kind of things for a while. If you think back before the blackout game between Georgia and Alabama in 2008, Cochran is the one who famously said they're wearing black because they're going to a funeral, and sure enough, I guess that day in Sanford Stadium, it sort of turned out to be that way. Cochran may be a bit prophetic. So Alabama's kind of used these kinds of tactics, this kind of attitude to push the Georgia program around before. But I think Georgia fans would be quick to say to Scott Cochran and anybody else, this ain't 2008. And it ain't 2012 when Georgia kind of stumbled there at the end of the game near the goal line. And it's certainly not 2015 when Georgia thought it was ready for Alabama, only to be embarrassed when the Crimson Tide showed up there at Sanford Stadium. I can't promise you Georgia's going to win this game on Monday night, but I can promise you this, that Georgia is just as motivated, just as focused, just as ready to compete in this game as the Scott Cochran-led Alabama there. Scott Cochran smashing second-place trophies as a symbol of what this game means to Alabama. Listen, I think the importance is just as strong from Georgia. And if you don't believe me, let's listen to Kirby Smart here for a moment. Now, let me give you the context for all of this. last Monday, Georgia won the biggest game this program has won in, you can decide how many years, but it's a lot of years and a lot of decades. And not only was it a great win, it was a great game. It's one of the most emotional moments I've ever experienced as a sports fan. Here we are, what is it, Friday? The game was Monday. I still haven't gotten over it. I think about the game all the time. About 80 or 90% of the conversations I have with anybody about any subject somehow sort of veer back in the direction of the Rose Bowl. It's all anybody can think about. It's all anybody can talk about. And for a lot of college football programs, that'd be the cap to a season. How could it get any better than this? Listen to Kirby Smart. He was asked just really a day or so after the Rose Bowl game, hey, listen, you've been through a lot this season. You had the emotional high of the Rose Bowl win against Oklahoma. How are you feeling right now? How are you dealing with all of this? Well, Kirby Smart's answer, I think, sets up Monday to be an all-time epic showdown. Here's Kirby.
Oh, I'm good. I was ready to get out of there as soon as the game was over. I mean, I was running across the field as fast as I could to shake his hand so I could leave because I'm ready to get back. Emotionally, I'm excited about the opportunity. You know, you can coach a long time and not get opportunities like this. And I've been blessed to be part of games of this magnitude and nature before. Obviously never as a head coach, but I know that every minute and every second counts, and that's what's important to me, and I want to make sure these players understand that because a lot of them don't. They don't understand that, 20 minutes with the media, 45 minutes waiting on a bus, or 2 hours waiting in traffic. Those all add up when you start adding them, and that's what's important to me is to lead these young men in the right direction so they have the best opportunity at success that they can have.
So now think about this for a moment. I can tell you my own story here. The last thing I wanted to do on Monday night was leave the Rose Bowl. I was just about the last person in that stadium, standing there in the middle of that field, taking pictures, picking up souvenirs. I took some of those roses home with me. I scooped up a bunch of confetti off the ground. I stuffed it in my pockets. The last thing I wanted to do was leave the Rose Bowl. It was the single greatest moment I'd ever had as a sports fan, to be in the building that day, to celebrate that, and to be kind of like down on the field there. It was all said and done. I wanted to live in that space really forever. At that time, I can tell you, as a fan, the farthest thing from my mind was a national championship game on Monday. Kirby Smart, obviously the exact opposite. Already thinking about the logistics and planning, the moment, actually, if you take him at his word there, before he's even sticking his hand out to shake Lincoln Riley's hand, he's already thinking about getting that over so he can get this team on the bus. And I can tell you from some sort of eyewitness first-person accounts that Kirby Smart was ornery, and he was salty after that game, trying to rush everybody along, rush the media out of the locker room. It's an open locker room for a bowl game like this. He wanted the players back on the buses. He wanted the players back on a plane. He wanted the University of Georgia football team back in Georgia as quickly as he could because Kirby Smart was not going to sit around and celebrate a Rose Bowl win. He wanted to get ready for Alabama on Monday, which brings him back to Scott Cochran, smashing trophies, saying second place doesn't matter to Alabama. Well, listen, this is a brand new brand of Georgia football as well, and Georgia ain't playing for second place either. Now, I can't promise you Georgia's going to win on Monday, but I can tell you this. They're going to fight just as hard as Alabama, and the competitive edge that has defined the Crimson Tide since Nick Saban became coach, that brand of football is in Athens, Georgia now, too. My name is Brandon Adams. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, and we are talking about Monday night, the College Football Playoff National Championship game. It's good to have you with us as we do it. Whether you watch us on Facebook Live at 10 a.m. on the DawgNation Facebook page or check us out at noon on the radio on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, or you listen to us in podcast form. iTunes, SoundCloud. We post the show at the world-famous DawgNation.com. We try to make the show easy for you to find. We're glad you found us. And I cannot go any further into today's show without saying a big, big thank you. First of all, our host last night, the Marlows, in Brookhaven. Once again, they just roll up the red carpet for us. Marlowe's treats us the way the Rose Bowl treated us. They've treated us the way all these great road trips have gone this season. Marlowe's just really rolls out the red carpet and takes good care of DawgNation. It was great to be there last night and to celebrate with so many of y'all. Such an awesome scene. I showed up at Marlowe's about a half an hour before the broadcast and our event was supposed to start, and already in the parking lot, the place was full, and you could tell that it was a bunch of Georgia fans because it's all a bunch of Georgia car flags. I should have taken a picture of it. Just this sea of car flags of people there at the Marlows ready to go for our event last night. So much fun to be a part of. And we've got some more Marlows events coming up in January focused on recruiting and the push towards National Signing Day. But David Green, the former Georgia quarterback, was great last night. Just a great time at Marlows Brookhaven. For those of you that came out, really appreciate you being there, and I was happy to be a part of it with you. Also want to get ready for our Simply Smarter game planning. It's brought to you by Aldi here. And for our Simply Smarter game planning today, I want to look at something that Lane Kiffin told Chris Lowe from ESPN.com. And I got to tell you, I thought the analysis here from Kiffin's pretty spot on. Normally we think of Kiffin as being kind of a funny guy, kind of a goofball, but I think his analysis on the game between Georgia and Alabama actually fits really well in what we've been doing with our Simply Smarter game planning discussion. One of the things that Kiffin told Lowe about what Georgia should do here, I'm going to read you this quote here from ESPN.com. He says they, meaning Georgia, are going to have to find a way to do non-traditional things. Be really good on special teams. Maybe make fourth down conversions or fakes. They're going to have to play as the underdog because Alabama is just too strong. So I partially agree with most of what Kiffin's saying there. Now, I do think, and I even touched on this yesterday, that Alabama's a point spread favorite in this game for a sort of a justifiable reason. And so, therefore, I do think it makes sense for Georgia to approach the game as an underdog. Not because, Kiffin says Alabama's just too strong. I don't think that's the case. I think that Alabama deserves to be favored over Georgia, but not so strong that Georgia's got to sort of, pray and hope for the best and take some sort of a Hail Mary shot. I don't necessarily feel that way. But I do think there's an underdog mentality that would serve Georgia well here because Georgia is really good at a lot of things, and Alabama is good at most of those same things as well. So this game is probably ultimately going to be decided by the team that does something the other guy either doesn't expect or isn't properly prepared for. And therefore, taking that underdog mentality of taking some chances and taking some shots. I thought last year in the national championship game against Clemson, I thought Nick Saban got micromanaging and controlling over his offense. I thought he became a little too, almost too intense for his own good there in that game. Can a looser, calmer, more poised Kirby Smart kind of throw something at Saban that he's not expecting here on Monday night? Kind of taking that underdog mentality, I think that might work out. We talked about that yesterday. That maybe it's showing Alabama some. I'm talking about some small samples of what maybe Oklahoma would show them. Some up-tempo offense, a little more passing than maybe Alabama's expecting. That may be kind of a way to go there. The other thing that Kiffin also says, which I think is kind of interesting here, it kind of plays into something else we talked about yesterday, is that he thinks that Alabama's going to win the game. And the reason why Kiffin thinks that's because of what he says, Jalen's ability to get out of trouble. He means the quarterback, Jalen Hurts. He says that showed up against Clemson. They had guys come loose and come free, and they just couldn't make the play on him. So listen, Jalen Hurts is obviously a great runner. He's a terrific athlete. But I'm going to tell you right now, if I've got to go head-to-head my team against Alabama, and Alabama's got a great running quarterback, you give me any linebacker in the country to kind of keep a running quarterback in check, I'm going to take Roquan Smith. He's the Buckus Award winner, and you know what? Jalen Hurts may shake free from him, and he may get some big running plays. If he does, at the end of that game, I will symbolically stick out my hand and shake his hand and say, good game, good effort, because you can't ask for better personnel to go up against Jalen Hurts than what Roquan Smith might be able to do there. We saw him chase down would-be ball carriers in an amazing way against Oklahoma on Monday. Go back to Brandon Wimbush against Notre Dame. He's taken on some dynamic athletes, and he's been good for Georgia in the past. If Jalen Hurts' legs, the reason why Lane Kiffin thinks Alabama's going to win this game, I'm a believer that Georgia with Roquan Smith is going to be able to neutralize that. I worry about those Alabama wide receivers. Even though I don't have great respect for Hurts as a thrower, I still think the Alabama wide receiving core is good enough to get open. I think that's an example of something that Alabama might throw in Georgia's direction that's maybe a little bit different than the Dogs are expecting and preparing for. But one way or another, I think that's going to be the thing that decides this game. Who does the unexpected and who executes a atypical aspect of the game plan in a pretty effective way. That's ultimately what I believe is going to decide the game, and that's ultimately an example of Simply Smarter game planning. Here on DawgNation Daily, Simply Smarter game planning is brought to you by Aldi. And did you know that Aldi now delivers groceries to your door via Instacart? You can get started in a few simple steps. Simply smarter shopping at Aldi. As I said, coming up in just a moment, Jeff Sintel going to be with us here today on DawgNation Daily. Before that, I think the state of Georgia is doing a really cool thing today. Governor Nathan Deal has proclaimed this UGA Football Friday. In fact, I think we even have, if you're watching us on video, a screen grab here of the official proclamation. First of all, how good does that look for those of you who are seeing this on your screen? By the governor of the state of Georgia, a proclamation, UGA Football Friday. And the challenge is here for Georgia fans to be dressed fully in their red and black all day long today. And the good thing about challenges like this is I actually don't know anybody that hasn't been. I'm talking about, obviously, inside DawgNation. I don't know anybody that hasn't been dressed in red and black here over the last few days. So if the challenge here is this for it to be a UGA Football Friday, I think the governor's spot on this. I think we roll right into a UGA Football Saturday and a UGA Football Sunday, and then come Monday, this entire state is going to be painted red. And it has been so much fun here over the last few days to hear from some folks who are obviously, making their plans, figuring out how they handle work. We had a bunch of UGA students with us last night over at our Marlowe's event in Brookhaven. They had driven over from Athens. They're trying to decide what their class situation is going to be. It sounds like you've had some professors kind of give them a little bit of break, cancel some classes, which we think is a good thing here for this special time of year. Hopefully at work, you're not too bleary-eyed on Tuesday morning. You're not too having to work too late that you can't make your plans for the game. It's just going to be a really, really fun special day. We're excited about being a part of your coverage here on DawgNation Daily. And by the way, we've got some great stuff coming up for you this weekend as well. We'll tell you all about that coming up. For now, let's turn our attention back to recruiting a little bit. A lot going on there. Let's bring in Jeff's intel, and it's good to have you with us as well here today on DawgNation Daily.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
And Jeff Sintel, I told our audience a few minutes ago that it seems like it has been forever since you've been with us here today on DawgNation Daily. You've always been on the show twice a week, but we've had the Rose Bowl week. You were covering All-Star games. That kind of threw us off. We had Christmas before that. So, I mean, it's been, I want to say, a good 2 weeks since you've been on the show, has it not?
Well, Brandon, that's your fault, sir. You've been wheeling, dealing, kiss stealing, jet flying, limo riding, Rose Bowl loving. Man, I'm going to tell your audience something right now. Brandon was so happy after that Rose Bowl. He probably would have probably hugged Jan Kim, high-five Michael Adams. He was the happiest man in the world. After that Rose Bowl win.
I really was, Jeff. We were actually joking about this a couple minutes ago before you joined us in the show. Kirby Smart was talking about how he was ready to get out of the stadium and get everybody back to Georgia and get prepping. I said I was the exact opposite of that. Y'all had to drag me off that field. I mean, it was the lights were going off in the stadium. Everybody had gone home, and I was still standing on the middle of that field trying to scrape that confetti and put it in my pocket and take those roses with me and every other souvenir I could get my hand on. I didn't want to leave Rose Bowl Stadium because I didn't want that night to be over. Now, I was looking forward to a national championship, but I wanted to bask in that one a lot longer than Kirby Smart did.
Bask, that's the perfect word for you, Brandon, bask. I mean, this man was sitting here like, okay, do I need a picture here? Can I get this rose? How about this angle right here? I mean, it was a DawgNation day for sure.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I actually, before we get into the recruiting stuff, because the truth is I have not done a good job covering the Orlando, the San Antonio. I have not done a good job with that this week. We've been so immersed in Rose Bowl stuff. So I do want to get into a lot of this recruiting with you in a minute, because there's some important news there that we can't ignore, even with the build-up to Monday night. But would you mind just kind of sharing with me some of your own memories? We experienced a lot of this together on Monday, and I was glad to have you there as a part of it. But when you look back on your own time covering the Rose Bowl for DawgNation and the experience that you saw for so many Georgia fans, what sticks out in your mind?
Well, you're never going to forget the Rose Bowl, ever, period, point blank. But to me, I guess I want to just kind of give an attaboy or a slap on the back to the Georgia fans and the Georgia people, because there were some times in that game, everybody knows them, the videos are viral of the watch parties where the Bulldogs in their season were on life support. And it seemed like several times during the game, whether it was the UGA chant or lighting up the cell phone tradition at opportune moments, overtime, fourth quarter, it was almost like the fans had the crash cart out. They had the paddles on the Georgia season, and they were trying to charge the team back up and will them back to life, and they did. That you just add Rose Bowl, you add Notre Dame, you add the beatdowns at Tennessee and Florida. and the way that game had to end, it just fits the entire narrative of the Georgia season. Perhaps my finest memory, though, is watching Sony score. Everybody has that moment. If you guys haven't seen that thing on Twitter of how Sony's touchdown is set to the score of Titanic, you need to do so. But my moment for me is after the touchdown, and everybody's embracing him. Jonas Jennings is embracing Sony, saying that's what you worked so hard for. That's what we worked so hard for. Isaiah Wynn grabbed him up, and Isaiah Wynn's kind of like the Papa Bear of the offense, saying so unassuming, such a very kind young man, always working hard, and he grabbed up Sony. But the one that I should get all the Georgia fans in their feels was when Garrison Hurst found Sony, and he kind of cradled his helmet in his hands, and he whispered some things into his ear about how proud he was of him and how much he's done for Georgia. And that, to me, just symbolized why folks have Georgia rooms, why folks bark like dogs, why folks put the magnets and flags all over their cars. That, to me, was the Georgia moment. It was the past, the present, and the future kind of all together right there.
Boy, Jeff, that's so well said, and such a great memory for Georgia fans. They're obviously looking forward to maybe adding to those memories on Monday against Alabama. I want to get a thought from you on that game coming up, but as we said, I got to take care of some of this recruiting business because I have not talked enough about that this week. And let me start with Justin Fields here, and let me give you my opinion on this situation because I feel like I have a pretty good read on this, and I think in some respects sometimes maybe the mainstream media kind of gets this wrong. I think if you're Justin Fields, obviously, if you could go play pro baseball and sign a big contract, who wouldn't want to do that? And I totally understand the notion of, well, I'm gonna wait and just hear kind of final word on that, or maybe sort of be deliberate in my decision as long as it possibly goes down. I mean, who wouldn't want to go make big time money in pro baseball if you could? But based on my sort of understanding from people who know baseball better than I do, that's probably not the kind of prospect Fields is. And when it's all said and done, I think he's an early enrollee at Georgia. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think he is an early enrollee, but let me just kind of untangle the baseball stuff for everybody, because we've been writing about this for a while. Fields and his family, especially his father, they're really cognizant of making sure the young man takes advantage of all of his opportunities. He doesn't like to close doors. So let's say there's a way that he comes back, and it is complicated a little bit with like what's Jacob Eason going to do. Georgia would be down to just one scholarship quarterback if Fields decides not to enroll early. That's a complicated thing right there. But to me, I'm going to just put this in layman's terms about the Justin Fields decision. Justin Fields has a higher probability of making $30 million within the next 4 years as a football player than he does as a baseball player. The scouts I talk to, I still have a lot of scouts on my phone from when I covered high school sports, and I was always dealing with draft stories every year. They told me that he's high school shortstop, but he's more of a corner outfielder in the pro game. Needs some refinement on all levels of his game. I mean, his arm is incredible, but it's just considered an above-average arm for an outfielder. His speed is great for a football player, but it's just considered above-average speed for a lethal type speedster in the 60 on the base pass. So excuse me there. But I think he enrolls early. I think that's kind of been the plan all along. I just know this. Justin absolutely loves Georgia, loves the thought of playing for Georgia, and I think he will go with the choice with his heart at the very end. And maybe if he does play pro base, he does wait it out. And there's a wrinkle there with baseball as well that I just want to make sure people hear this out as an option. So let's say he plays baseball his senior year at Harrison, and he goes through his senior year and he gets evaluated by pro scouts. And maybe someone decides that Justin is worth risking a late round pick, like a 30th round or 40th round pick. Well, then they would hold Justin's rights for 3 years while he's in college. Justin can still report to Georgia in late June. And then he can also only spend a couple of months, maybe about 5-6 weeks every summer in instructional league and rookie ball, kind of refining those tools and kind of seeing what he's got there and not closing that baseball door per se. That's an option, but I want the folks to realize that I do think he will enroll early at Georgia. And hey, if you're looking for something to celebrate today, Brenton Cox, the 5-star defensive end who had 2 sacks last night in the Under Armour game, really terrorized the opposing backfield. He enrolls at Georgia today. He's going straight from Orlando to Athens today to enroll at Georgia.
Boy, that's big news. That's a great addition to the Georgia class. And one of the things that Brenton Cox had said this past week that kind of got some attention was that he knew of a guy that was going to flip to Georgia that other people didn't necessarily know. Well, you know how Georgia fans are, Jeff. They start wondering who Brenton Cox may be talking about. The name that comes up there is Quay Walker, the current Alabama commit. That's at least the online chatter from fans who care about this kind of stuff. And I know you've kind of written about Quay Walker a lot lately. It seems like Jeremy Pruitt's departure from Alabama to Tennessee is kind of maybe caused him to question some things about his commitment to the Crimson Tide. Is Georgia standing to gain from what is a little bit of coaching unrest there at Alabama at the moment?
There is. I spoke to Quay last night about this topic, all these things. He will not decommit from Alabama. He will not commit as of today, of course. All this stuff can change like the grains of sand on the beach. He could definitely, he plans to stay committed to Alabama. Not likely to go to Alabama, though, it sounds like. And he will make his decisions on the old school national signing day. He needs to take a bunch of officials. Georgia's going to get one. Auburn's going to get one. Tennessee will likely get one. And then he will go from there. Quay also feels like he would have stuck with Alabama had Pruitt remained at Alabama, because that was the connection there. That was a really good vibe there. But now the combination of Kevin Shearer, who he knew very well at Georgia as his primary recruiter, plus Pruitt at Tennessee is going to make him give Tennessee a good look. There's also Florida to think about here. Florida was his dream school, along with Georgia. He grew up loving both those schools. And Trey Dean, if you guys want to rewind your DawgNation daily recruiting chat memory banks a little bit, Trey Dean, for the longest time, especially in the spring, I'm talking like February, March, was trending towards Georgia. Georgia decided to look elsewhere for its safeties and DBs, though. And Quay Walker, those two had always thought about and longed to play together. Lots of times, initially, the thought was they were going to both be there at Georgia. Now, Trey Dean, as you guys will recall, he is signed with Florida. Trey Dean is at Florida, and Trey Dean is hawking Quay Walker to Florida. The other thing to consider there about that Brenton Cox stuff is, Brenton, nice guy, nice kid, but I don't think he had enough subtlety to his Twitter comments or whatever when he talked about there's a guy here that's not committed to Georgia that will eventually flip to Georgia. Well, there wasn't a whole lot of candidates there, especially a guy that was committed to another school that Georgia had sincere interest in and was a flip candidate. I mean, you really talk about guys at the Under Armour, and there's Tommy Bush that's a wide receiver. He's not committed to anybody.
Right.
Justin Fields has already signed with Georgia. Brenton Cox has already signed with Georgia. Tommy Bush, we just spoke about him a second ago. And then you've got Quay Walker. I mean, that's the gamut because, Elijah Moore was committed to Georgia, but he flipped to Ole Miss because Georgia didn't, Georgia and him decided to part ways. But you don't have a whole lot of options. Kearis Jackson was an Under Armour guy, but he didn't even go down to the event. He chose to go ahead and enroll early in Athens this week as well. So if we had to go CSI DawgNation Daily, there's not a lot of microscopes and there's not a lot of work to examine what's going on that Under Armour All-American roster to figure out who Brent was talking about.
Yeah, that wasn't exactly the most subtle reference there, I don't guess. It seems like Jeremy Pruitt's absence may also be impacting Tyson Campbell a bit, who is going to take an official visit to Alabama, but I mean, based on the quotes that I'm reading from you there at DawgNation, it seems like Campbell's a little softer in Alabama than he was before. Maybe that's good news for Georgia, right?
Thing to look about there is you've got Campbell currently has just two officials set. Those are to Georgia and Alabama. I do believe there's a reason for that. I think he's going to go through those two, and he's going to decide, where else do I need to go? Do I need to check out Clemson? Do I need to check out Ohio State? He doesn't even have an official visit set right now to Miami. So I think that's kind of like the early phases where he's trying to weed out Georgia, Alabama. Now, the thing with Alabama that's interesting is his primary recruiter was indeed Jeremy Pruitt. And that relationship right there has not gotten stronger for the Tide since he's now recruiting for Tennessee. So that's something where the Alabama connection hasn't weakened while Georgia's has remained stable. The main thing for Tyson, he said this several times in the interviews, is he's looking for a bond with the players on the team, the current players on the team. He wants to feel like he can mesh well with those guys, hang out, have a good time, and ball out for 3 to 4 years. And a lot of guys say 3 to 4 years, Brandon. I think Tyson Campbell is a 3-year guy. 6'2.5", 185, runs about a 10.6 in the 100. He was running faster than you were around Rose Bowl on Monday night, as happy as you were. And let me just, I put this in the blog yesterday. I want to make sure everybody hears this on your show. Tyson Campbell, should Georgia sign either Tyson Campbell or Isaac Taylor-Stewart, those are the 2 5-star corners. That is very rare air for Georgia in the 5-star cornerback lane. The last time they signed one of those was Brandon Smith in 2009. The only other one was 2003. I'm talking about a true composite 5-star corner for Georgia. It's only happened twice. And that somehow this Georgia season, with everything's coming up aces, Georgia is looking down the barrel at signing a pair of 5-star cornerbacks, potentially at least one in 2018.
Since you mentioned Isaac Taylor-Stewart, would you do me a favor? Give me a little bit of a comparison between the two. I mean, the one guy's way out in California, the other guy's down in South Florida, so to a certain extent, Campbell's geographically the closer of the two prospects. But when you sort of look at these two, big-time players, how do you compare them? How do you contrast them?
Well, they're both big, they're both long, and they're both in that 6'2", 185, 190 range. Tyson Campbell, I think, is a little more seasoned. And what I mean by seasoned is he has played at American Heritage and he started on those islands at American Heritage. Somehow, American Heritage paired up the nation's #1 corner on one side and the nation's #3 corner on the other side.
Amazing.
I don't know how anybody ever threw on them. I would be in zero coverage, cover zero the whole time, and send everybody I can besides the safety high at all times with those guys locking folks down. No help for those guys are needed. He's played a lot more big-time competition, a lot more tested ball. Isaac Taylor-Stewart's going to be a little bit faster, which is kind of like comparing, road and track between the Maserati and the Ferrari or something like that. I mean, Testarossa and Lamborghini. These guys are elite speedsters. Isaac Taylor-Stewart actually won the fastest man at the Nike opening back in the summer. And the thing about Isaac Taylor-Stewart is there's been a little bit of on-the-down-low recruiting here, and that's something everybody likes to hear. Georgia has kind of quietly been building. Mel Tucker, Kirby Smart, Justin Fields, other guys, kind of building a connection with Isaac since way back in the summer. And he's going to take his official visit on January the 26th. That will be definitely one to watch. And even in this week in Texas and in San Antonio, guys like Luke Ford, the rest of the Georgia signees that are there are 9 of them, are also there clocking and working Isaac Taylor-Stewart and making sure he has some good things in his ear regarding what's going on at Georgia.
Boy, that's an interesting thought to consider there, and kind of an interesting subplot to kind of follow here with both these elite cornerbacks. I think one of the most important moments for Kirby Smart since he became Georgia coach was the flip, if you will, from Jake Fromm from Alabama to Georgia. And, Jeff, this was not the way that Georgia used to go about its business. Georgia, if it had a 5-star quarterback like Jacob Eason, it wasn't going to go after another elite player until that guy left campus, basically. At least that's the way kind of things seem to kind of work. But yet Georgia did go after Fromm the year after Eason, and right now they're glad they have him because he's obviously been a quarterback good enough to lead Georgia to a national championship game. You wrote a great story this week looking back on those times, pulling some quotes back from the Fromm family, from Jake himself, telling their story about the respect they have for Alabama, but the reasons why they chose Georgia. And that's a pretty timely discussion to have here with the game coming up on Monday night, is it not?
It is, and it's kind of funny. It's kind of like an offshoot of how it happened. They just got to know Kirby very well when he was at Alabama. And this is one of those moments, I guess the best way I can describe it to folks, maybe especially parts of maybe the Jeff and Brandon demographic and maybe a little bit older, is there's that Rolling Stone song where it's like you can't always get what you want, but you get what you need.
Sure.
And Jake Fromm grew up wanting to play for Georgia paraphernalia all throughout his home. He watched Georgia on Saturday, but the offer never came. Georgia went with Bailey Hockman, and man, does that seem like 16 gazillion years ago when we were thinking about these sort of things in the Rick era with Schottenheimer and Bailey Hockman. But that's what we have with him. And we've got a situation there with Bailey Hockman where you know, he's at Florida State, but sorry guys, there was somebody tapping on my hotel room door right there. Housekeeping was coming through. So you got live real-time interviews, Brandon, all the time.
That's right.
So
you're in Orlando. You're covering the game. This is authentic, Jeff. This is like, you know, boots on the ground stuff. You deal with that. We got to do that because you're on the road.
On the road tripping. Coming back to Atlanta today, though. But so here's what we got. We've got he just got to know Kirby very well. Alabama kind of has this thing where he tells recruits once they commit that your coordinator, your position coach probably won't be here throughout the gamut of your time at Alabama, but you're committing to play for him, you're committing to play for Nick Saban, you're committing to play for Alabama. So the relationship with Lane Kiffin wasn't as strong as kind of just getting to know Kirby at functions. I mean, Kirby's the type of recruiter, Coach Smart, he'll go the extra mile. That's what he lives. He lives to recruit. Thinks it's the lifeblood of any program. So they just got to know Kirby. Kirby gets the job at Georgia. He contacts them. This is such a true Jake Fromm story. He contacts them. He gets in touch with his high school coach. His high school coach says, you need to call Coach Kirby. They're in a duck blind. No cell service, but text messages can get through. And Jake Fromm calls Kirby Smart, and basically Kirby tells him that, hey, I'm not trying to pull you away from Alabama, but I want to let you know that you didn't have an offer at Georgia before, and you do now. So if you want to consider Georgia still, you would be more than welcome. And then Coach Smart did make Jake Fromm his very first offer as the head coach of the University of Georgia. That was significant. Fast forward, he needed to take a couple of trips to Georgia, meet Jim Chaney. Everything checked off all the boxes there. And the rest, as we shall say, is simply recruiting history.
Yeah, I would say that decision by Kirby Smart to make Jake Fromm his first scholarship offer, I'd say that's worked out pretty well so far.
I'd love to see what I don't know the trivia question behind who was his second offer.
Right.
Maybe a bunch of reaffirmed offers. I think maybe he was reaffirming a bunch of offers. But the second original offer, I'll have to go back through my notes on that.
Let me finish up this real quick. Obviously, Jeff, you're coming back to Atlanta. You're excited about being a part of our DawgNation coverage of the national championship game on Monday night. You have a thought kind of percolating there about how you think this thing's going to go. I won't ask you to make any kind of official prediction or anything like that. But what's in your head here about Georgia and Alabama as we record this just a couple days before the game?
Well, I think everybody's right when part of the chatter that's coming around starts to deal with very low scoring. You know, here's the thing that just jumps out at me. Kirby's going to know the personnel. Coach Smart is going to know the personnel at Georgia and Alabama, especially Alabama, better than anyone else on the field. Mel Tucker will also have a good glimpse of that as well. Glenn Schumann will also have a good glimpse of that as well. That's something to put in the back pocket a little bit. Of course, all these players have developed for a while, but they've seen them on film, on crossover film. I just see a very low-scoring game. And to me, this is what my work just crystallizes in my mind. The game itself is still about players. It's going to be about who can move the other guys off the line, who can create separation. And I do still think the charts are there. Alabama still has more players than Georgia. Still has a lot more 4-star and 5-stars on the roster than Georgia. That's why I think it is going to be a very close game. And that's why I think maybe when Vegas still has Georgia as an underdog, that's kind of what they're thinking right there. I do see a very close game. I do see a very tight game. Special teams, maybe that's the time where Mecole Hardman actually breaks that one he's been longing for all year. Mecole gets loose. That would really help Georgia's chances. Whoever's going to play the cleaner game, I know this is the rhetoric that happens with every championship game, but those two teams are in the championship for a reason. And perhaps my final thought on this is Georgia's ability to stop Alabama's offense defensively. And when you think of it, I'm not using the transitive property too hard here, but I'm going to simply say this. It was much harder to stop the Auburn offense, and it looks much harder to stop the Oklahoma offense than it will be to stop the Alabama offense. And that's what I got to say about that.
Boy, that's a good thought to leave it with, Jeff. It is great to have you back, and no kidding about this. Great to have you back here on DawgNation Daily. Loved your coverage there in Orlando. Looking forward to hearing a lot more from you on that subject between now and National Signing Day in February. But before any of that, we got some real live business to take care of on Monday. Georgia-Alabama for the whole thing, the national championship. Jeff, I'll see you there at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and safe travels coming back to Atlanta.
Hey, Brandon, I got one more thought for everybody out
Please.
there. I kidded with you about this over the air, off the air before the show today. I think the popular thing in culture, I see way too much dilly-dilly. Dilly-dilly's everywhere. I think maybe I'm just going to try to curate your comments a little bit there. Maybe every time Brandon or somebody says something you like on this show, how about the term daily? Give that a shot. Go daily. If you simply concur with what you're hearing currently over the program, and maybe we can make that a new DawgNation thing. Instead of dilly, how about daily for 2018?
Jeff, I'll admit you're a very creative guy. I wish I would have thought of that myself.
Hey, man, that's what you keep me around for, man.
That's exactly right.
I see your new tag team partner at Marlowe's on Thursday nights, man. I gotta come with my stuff on Friday morning to get back in the saddle.
You don't want to get Wally pipped by David Green? Is that what it is?
David Green may very well Jake Fromm the intel if I'm not careful here.
All right, Jeff. I'll see you later.
Take it easy, guys.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Do y'all think that would catch on, the daily? I don't know about that. I think it's a really clever idea. Jeff is a funny guy. And listen, I told you, I missed having him on DawgNation Daily. He came back in a big way today. So it is good to have him back on the program, and looking forward to being with him on Monday. And looking forward to being with all of y'all as well. We'll tell you more about our week to come. It's going to feel like a week. It's actually on a weekend. We're going to be all over things on Saturday and Sunday. The same way we had a lot of extra broadcasts last weekend, we're going to have a lot of those this weekend coming up as well. I wish I could tell you specific times. Through this, I don't really remember. But every time Georgia moves this weekend, we're going to be there with them covering it, including practices and media availabilities and everything else. And, of course, on Monday, it all leads to the Dixie Vodka postgame show after the game there from Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So it's going to be a big week of coverage. One thing I will tell you, though, is we are going to have a special AT&T SEC Country Live broadcast on Monday. Special time for us. We're going to be 1 p.m. Eastern time at the $3 Cafe there on Northside Drive near Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So we are going to do a special SEC Country Live broadcast there that day at $3 Cafe on Northside near the stadium. So it's going to be cold. It may be rainy. If you're looking for an indoor tailgate, it's probably a pretty good place to do that. I have not done as good a job promoting this. I probably should, so I'll make sure we get some word out on social media about that. So you can come see Mike Johnson and me there for a special broadcast of AT&T SEC Country Live from the $3 Cafe on Northside Drive. I'll also tell you, by the way, before we get to the SEC through very, very quickly here, the DawgNation Daily is also brought to you by our friends at Kroger. And listen, if you are looking for a way to sort of celebrate the national championship on Monday, having a big party for it, make sure you think about Kroger. A lot of great deals for your national championship game celebrations at your local Atlanta Kroger. You can get all of that going on there. So we'll go check them out, and Kroger can supply all your party needs for your national championship. Of course, we appreciate Kroger being a sponsor here on DawgNation Daily. All right, a couple recruiting stories I want to get to pretty quick. First of all, I am shocked about this. It looks like right now that J.J. Peterson, who's about to make his college announcement, it looks like he's not going to choose Alabama. He's going to choose Tennessee, despite the fact, hear this now, apparently he's never visited Knoxville, but he's about to choose Tennessee over Alabama, and the best we can tell, this is solely on the basis of Jeremy Pruitt becoming Tennessee head coach. That Pruitt was the basis of his relationship with Alabama, and now that Pruitt's gone, Peterson, who had not a commit but a strong Alabama lean for a long time, apparently he's just not feeling it for Alabama anymore. He's more about the relationship that he has with Pruitt, and he's going to go to Tennessee, at least according to I know that was the essential prediction that Chris Kirshner made for our sister site, SECCountry.com. He's got Peterson going to Tennessee, not sticking with Alabama here, who had been the school that he was really thought of as a strong lean towards. I don't want to make too much about this because it's going to sound like I'm fanning the flames of hysteria. But if I'm Alabama, I'm a little bit concerned that I don't have an assistant coach that can kind of step in the gap and rebuild a relationship that's lost when Jeremy Pruitt leaves that program. I mean, is this an example of Alabama slipping just a bit? I mean, they also lost out on Dab Joseph to a Georgia back in the early signing period. Lost that one junior college tight end. He ended up going to Tennessee as well. Maybe slipping a bit with Jacob Copeland, who may also end up at Tennessee. Maybe. I I mean, is this Alabama kind of coming down off its perch as the premier recruiting program in the SEC? And I don't think it's a program like Tennessee that stands to benefit from this most. It's actually Georgia. The unrest of Pruitt leaving is probably going to benefit Georgia. But this idea that Alabama just gets every player it wants, this year, that is not the case. They're still going to be fine. They're still going to have like a top 5 class. But they are not just getting every single player they want. Auburn does get a pretty good player, though. Anthony Schwartz, who's kind of has the reputation of being the fastest recruit in the country for 2018. He's a 4-star wide receiver. Schwartz chooses Auburn. Auburn has done well with wide receivers as of late, but maybe we haven't seen as many big numbers from them on the field as Auburn fans would have liked. I'm thinking about Nate Craig Myers here. I'm thinking about Kyle Davis, who's no longer with the program, Darius Slayton. But, this is kind of that final frontier for Auburn, to add more than just the running game to the offense. I think Anthony Schwartz is kind of an interesting prospect here, and obviously this is a loss for programs like Florida. We're also kind of chasing him down. Situation continues to be weird in LSU. It seems almost a foregone conclusion that Matt Canada is leaving. He's going to force LSU to fire him because he wants his full buyout. The contract is, I think it could be up to $3 million. I'm sure the two parties will end up negotiating a smaller settlement than that. But Canada's gone. The former Broyles Award finalist, no longer going to be at LSU, it would seem almost for sure. And back to the drawing board offensively for Ed Orgeron and the Tigers. I think this is a bad look for that program, a real bad look. A couple other quick stories I'll get to. Martez Ivey returns to Florida for his senior season. Ivey, the former 5-star prospect as an offensive lineman, hasn't had a great career. I don't think anybody would say that he has, but just like we said about C.C. Jefferson yesterday, getting players to come back is good for a Florida roster right now that's not that strong. They just need all the help they can get, and Ivey, I think, provides some of that. So this is a good news situation for Florida, even if Ivey himself has been less than a star player. I also think that Texas A&M hit something close to a home run with its defensive coordinator hire, taking Mike Elko from Notre Dame. They'd obviously gone after Dave Aranda from LSU, offered a lot of money. That didn't work out, but they do get Elko from the Irish, and he was a big turnaround for Notre Dame's defense this season. That's probably good news for another SEC school in Texas A&M. We'll make that your SEC through. All right, here on DawgNation Daily in just a moment, I want you to hear from Georgia coach Kirby Smart. Before we do that, though, I also want to remind you that DawgNation Daily is brought to you in part today by my friends at MyBookie. You know MyBookie as the sports book that's the home of the fast, no-hassle payout when you win. And listen, when that goes down, that's exactly what you want. That matters more than anything else. MyBookie pays off in just 2 business days. That's why I like them. That's why you will, too. And you're going to like this even better. Right now, when you play where the pros play at MyBookie, you can get your first deposit matched up to 100%. But you've got to use the promo code DawgNation. The promo code DawgNation, spelled the way that it's supposed to be, DAWG, DawgNation, at the website, mybookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid. It is simple as that. Use the promo code DawgNation, website mybookie.ag. Get your first deposit matched up to 100%. You can be a big winner when the Dogs win on Monday night if you've got the right side there with mybookie.ag. All right. Speaking here of the national championship game on Monday, and speaking of Jeremy Pruitt, I just mentioned going to Tennessee, it's actually a pretty weird dynamic in this game in that Pruitt's coaching for Alabama, Kevin Sherrer's coaching for Georgia, but immediately after that game, they're both going to start coaching with each other at Tennessee. Sherrer as his DC, Pruitt obviously is the head coach. They're working together as recruiting partners a bit right now, and how does this dynamic exactly work with one guy on one side, the other on the other for Monday night, and at times I'm sure sharing some text messages and phone calls about a different subject of getting good players to Tennessee? How is this? Is this weird? Well, apparently, according to Kirby Smart, it's not as weird as it might seem to some outside observers. Here's what Smart said about his relationship with Sherrer, Sherrer's relationship with Pruitt, and how it all factors in to the national championship game on Monday night.
Yeah, I got a good relationship with Jeremy. I got a good relationship with Kevin. They got a good relationship with each other. Kevin's got a good relationship with Nick. I mean, there's a lot of relationships across the board. I mean, I know that Kevin wants to win this game for University of Georgia, and Kevin wants to finish something he was a part of, and I think it speaks to his brand, the rest of his career, if he's able to win a national championship here. And certainly think Lorenzo Carter, Davin Bellamy, all the kids he's coached for the last 4 years, I guess it's been, and he wants to do well for those guys. And I'm sure Jeremy's the same way for the players that he recruited to Alabama. I think both parties are working independent of each other, knowing that on the recruiting side of things, they're working together. And there's not a whole lot of recruiting going on right now with the dead period, but I mean, I went through that. I think you got to separate what you're doing when you're working for the game. You're working for the game. You're working for recruiting. You're working for Tennessee. And if you're professional about your job, that's not really a problem.
So, with all due respect to Kirby Smart, I don't 100% believe what he says there. I think that coaches want to maintain this idea that, no, it's not weird at all. It wasn't weird for Kirby back at the end of the 2015 season. It's not weird for Jeremy Pruitt now. It's not weird for Kevin Shearer. But the truth is, it is weird. And Kirby Smart says, well, you just sort of know how to divide your time between getting ready for the game, getting ready for recruiting. But we all know this. You know, tasks sort of blend together, and sometimes clarity of thought is the victim when these sort of tasks kind of blend together. So I don't 100% believe him when he says that, but at the same time, I also don't think it's that big of a deal. I think that Kevin Shearer might be a little distracted about his next job on Monday night, but I think the Georgia linebackers will still be fine. I mean, let's face it, the guys he coaches are guys like Davin Bellamy and Lorenzo Carter. At this point in time, those two know what they're doing. I think they're going to be just fine. It's the same thing for the Alabama defense. You can't tell me that Kirby wasn't a little bit distracted for that final game before he took the Georgia job in 2016, the same way that Pruitt will probably be a little bit distracted on Monday as well. But teams can survive this kind of thing for one or a couple games. I mean, after all, Georgia was able to run an effective play before the half on Monday against Oklahoma, and Jim Chaney was on an elevator coming down to the bottom of the Rose Bowl Stadium when it happened. So this kind of thing goes on. It probably is a distraction for these guys, but it's not a distraction for the teams themselves. I'll tell you this, though. I can't wait for Monday. All right, thanks for being with us here today on the program. As we said before, we've got a lot coming up this weekend on a very special broadcast. It's going to be on video. Won't be podcast for that. We will be on video for the stuff this weekend leading up to Monday. And by the way, I should say that on Monday, DawgNation Daily at its normal time. We're going to have a regular DawgNation Daily. It'll be 100% focused on the preview for the national championship game, but we will do that on Monday, getting ready for Alabama that night. So busy weekend here at DawgNation.com and on the DawgNation Facebook page. Hope you will check that out. I will also say that 295 days from right now, Georgia goes back to Jacksonville. We hope it's as the reigning national champions. Wouldn't that be fun to rub in the face of the Florida Gators? Either way, Dogs will be back there, and we do it every day on this program. It's our Gator Hater Countdown because we still believe that a good Georgia fan is a Gator Hater first and foremost. Enjoy the weekend. Get ready for Monday. Game face on. National championship game will be here before you know it. We'll talk to you then. And on video, we will take some of your comments right now. Thanks so much for being with us on the program today. Boy, a lot of fun. A lot of fun getting ready for all of this. Just cannot wait for it to all unfold. We don't have a ton of time for a lot of comments today because I was late. But by the way, Randy Wood apparently likes the Daily. Instead of the Dilly, Jeff says Daily. Daily is actually a sneaky hard word for me to say, which is kind of fun to consider the fact that I say it every single day. But maybe that'll take off. Daily. Winfred Stein Spring, appreciate the kind words. Santiago DR, let me read what Santiago says here. Ready to experience Fan Central Media Day. So he's leaving from Missouri, parents' home after the work. Rose Bowl activities were amazing, but super excited for this weekend. One more big. That's right, one more big game to go. And I told y'all that the 24-hour rule, I didn't exactly abide by that. I feel like I'm just now sort of shaking off the cobwebs of the Rose Bowl. But luckily, I don't have to play, right? I mean, I don't have to have my true game face on. But I'm getting there. I'm getting focused on that one final game, the one more to go. And what Santiago, I think, is referencing is that this weekend, I think it's tomorrow. The truth is, I'm embarrassed to say this. I don't even know the schedule for this week. I got to learn this schedule. But tomorrow is the media day, and it's actually open to the fans. It's at, I think it's Phillips Arena. I think that's where it's going to be, and so you can come in and watch the media ask questions if that seems like an interesting thing to do. Josh McMillan says, anybody know when and where the Dogs going to arrive in Atlanta today? I'd like to take my son to greet them. I tell you what, check us out on social media. We'll try to put that out there for you because sure enough, we had a big meeting about all these schedule stuff yesterday, and it kind of went in one ear and out the other. So we are going to be doing a bunch of stuff, and team arrivals, things like that will be part of it, and so we'll try to give you as much information on all that as we can. Philip Sharp says, do you think that Georgia could sign both Tyson Campbell and Isaac Taylor-Stewart? I mean, I will tell you that thought has occurred to me, and I know that other people are going to say, well, Georgia's got other needs other than two defensive backs. But, man, Jeff would probably say no. Jeff would probably say it's an either-or situation. But I'm going to tell you, I'd love to add a couple 5-star defensive backs. That may be too greedy at one position group, and that may hurt me in another spot. But I need a big-time upgrade in terms of my cornerbacks, and I think that Campbell and Taylor Stewart can provide that. Morris Rich says, not sure my heart can take another game. I get so worked up. I was worked up right there with you on Monday, so I know exactly where you're coming from. Michael Morrow giving us a daily. Maybe this thing's going to take off here. Jeff is a creative guy. You got to give him credit for that. So, yeah, as far as like being worked up, yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, I can tell you I was tying myself in knots, twisting, because, in the press box and like the, when you're on the field, you have to be a, erudite, sophisticated member of the media. So I'm obviously trying to maintain that image. But on the inside, I am tying myself in knots. Josh Harshbarger, thanks for the kind words. Really appreciate that. Jerry Jackson also wants another big wide receiver, and Georgia looks like it's going to maybe get one of those with Tommy Bush. Trey Dukes gives us a daily. Hey, this thing may take off here. Jeff is a sharp guy. He should have kept that one for himself. Adam Hicks says, how special is this season for me as a broadcaster? So, Adam, here's what I'll say. I told this to a lot of people yesterday, and it just sort of occurred to me that this is what I have been doing, but I'm sort of glad I'm doing it this way. So you can end up looking at all of this as just sort of a to-do list, right? How much am I going to work this weekend? Where am I going to be? Am I going to cover everything that I'm supposed to? Am I keeping track of the recruiting stuff while the game preparations are ongoing? There's a lot to be done, and you can get a little anxious about what you have done, what you need to do, and you can just sort of end up sort of like wishing the whole thing away or just sort of missing the whole thing. So I have really tried to, as a broadcaster and a fan, make sure that while I'm in the midst of doing this work, being here with you for the show every day, being prepared for the show every day, delivering my job and taking care of the tasks I've been assigned, to also stop and enjoy it all and to look around. I remember being at Notre Dame, and, I'd watched that stadium on television for a million years. And I remember standing up there's like this awning off the side of the press box. It's like a patio. And I remember looking over there, and you see like the touchdown Jesus, and you see the golden dome, and you see the, the iconic imagery of the stadium itself, and you're like, I'm really here. Like, I am actually standing in this spot, and this is happening in real life. And the same thing happened in Jacksonville, where y'all know how important the Florida game is to me, and we'd had such a good time building up to that game, and just really, y'all were good sports about it. You kind of let me do my spiel on that, and after the game, I had a chance to interact with so many of y'all. You came up to me, you said hello, and we kind of chatted on Twitter about it maybe, and it just felt really good to see Georgia accomplish that feat, something that I thought had been a real stumbling block for the program. And that was one of those surreal moments where I had to stop and say, in the midst of working, in the midst of trying to travel back to Atlanta, in the midst of all that, let me enjoy this. Let me stop and enjoy this. Appreciate the fact that this is happening, and I am here. SEC Championship the same way. I'd never been to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That thing is incredible. I'm looking forward to being back there on Monday. That thing is so nice. And when you're in the building, you just sort of look up and you see all that stuff, you're thinking, boy, this is just, I'm just lucky. Blast, whatever you want to say. I'm really fortunate to be where I am right now, which is to say nothing of what the Rose Bowl experience was like. The finest moment I've had as a sports fan, the finest moment I've had in my professional career, just to kind of soak all of that in. And so as a broadcaster, what I've tried to do is, in the midst of doing the work and bringing coverage, to also stop and allow myself just to breathe it in and say, this is all happening. This is real. This is right now, and it may not ever get better than this. So thanks for bringing that up. All right, let me get a couple more comments. We'll get out of here. Philip Jordan Wells also gives us a daily. There we go. I got to tell you, I like this. Gary and Christian Golsano says, BA, I'm afraid that the success this year with a team with less talent than the Dogs will have in the next few years will get fans and media harping over Georgia if they don't make the championship again. So, Gary and Christian, what I will say is there is obviously a challenge associated with staying on top. When we first printed the Own the East t-shirts, The idea wasn't to own the East in 2017. The idea was to make the division your own for many years to come and be back in Atlanta and compete against Alabama or whatever the team emerges from the West. And, the way that Georgia's the reigning SEC champion right now, you got to go back and defend that title again next year. And you've got to, sort of defend your spot among the national elite in the college football playoff. You've got to hold on to that stuff and defend. Other people want what you have, and you got to fight against it. And it's not going to be a perfect process. Some years you're going to be there, some years you're not. I think that Georgia fans are going to appreciate the entire ride, though. At least I hope they do. If this doesn't become, a sense of complacency, I don't believe that it will. That it doesn't become, this, sense of greed where only undefeated national championship seasons can be tolerated. And if you're not beating teams 40-0, you're not doing your job. I think Georgia fans are mostly more level-headed than that. I think the next few years are actually going to be really fun. And I think that Kirby Smart is really good at sort of blocking out a lot of the stuff in the media. Either the rat poison stuff of telling you how great you are, or the nitpicky stuff of saying, yeah, those little lights aren't twinkling, though, for those of you that remember the Christmas Vacation. I think Kirby's good at blocking out both ends of that spectrum. I don't think Georgia's going to fall prey to anything like that. I think that hopefully what happens on Monday, one way or another, is the start towards a really fun ride over the course of the next few years. But truthfully, it's not really helpful for me to think about the future right now. What's helpful for me is to just sort of think about the present and what Georgia has a chance to accomplish, and to knock off a coach and a program that not too long ago it felt like Georgia was a long way away from being able to beat. Matthew McGahee says, I thought that Georgia had to go through Alabama and Atlanta to win the title. I meant the SEC, but it turns out I was still right. Yeah, Matthew, that's probably true. William Jones says we're going to be in the running for championships for many years to come, or as he says, the ships for many years to come. William, that's well said. Jose Serrano said I had the best game experience ever at the Rose Bowl, but we win next week. It's going to be even better. Yeah, I think that's well said too. Danny Vaughn says if we don't win, I'm still going to be proud of my dogs for the year they gave me. Danny, I think I'll probably feel the same way. Eric Moody says the Kirby Smart pain train's just leaving the station. Jerry Jackson says DeAndre Swift is the future. Yeah, I think that's maybe true. I think Swift's got a bright future. I'm curious to see if Swift gets used more on Monday than he was a week ago against Oklahoma. Shanahan Martinez says X factor in the game. Boy, that's a good question. Let me think for a couple minutes on that, then we got to get ready to get out of here. Who is my X factor in this game? I think that it's got to be somebody catching passes that maybe we're not thinking of, right? I mean, we've seen Georgia lean on Javon Wims a lot this season, so he doesn't really feel like the X factor to me. It's somebody else. I think Terry Godwin can fit into that discussion very well. Godwin's a former 5-star player. At times at Georgia, he's really looked like that. He can be tough to guard. Can he occupy some space in the middle of the field that opens up some quick throws for Jake Fromm? I'll also add the tight end into this discussion. Charlie Warner gets 3 catches against Oklahoma, but maybe hurt and hobbled. We don't really know of his status too much yet. I'm sure Kirby Smart will talk about that this week. Isaac Nada caught a touchdown in the SEC championship. We saw tight ends be a big factor for Alabama in the last 2 years in national championship games. So I'd mention names like Nada. I'd mention names like Terry Godwin, I believe, as possible X factors here. Ken Feinberg says he thinks Riley Ridley's the possible X factor, obviously against his brother, Calvin Ridley, on the other side. All right, we are late here. I got to get ready to get out of here. I am so sorry I didn't get more comments in today. The problem is the show ran a little long today. I just hadn't had Jeff on in a while, so I think I was enjoying talking to Jeff. McCole Hardman also mentioned as an X factor. And I guess I need to start saying Mecole because I have a tendency to say Muckole, and I believe that the correct pronunciation there is Mecole, so I need to try to start working on that to make sure I say that a little bit better. Last comment comes from Demetrius Etheridge, who says, this is going to be the last time we have to deal with Alabama to win the national championship. We'll be beating them in the SEC championship game in the future, LOL. And that's a pretty good thought. Yeah, there's no doubt that Alabama's been a bit of an arch nemesis for Georgia, and it seems like that final mountain to climb here in the SEC, and maybe for supremacy in all of college football. On Monday, Georgia gets a chance to climb that mountain, and I can't wait to watch them try to do it. It is going to be a lot of fun. Stick with us this weekend. We got a lot of coverage all weekend long. I'll be back on Monday, 10 a.m. for another episode of DawgNation Daily Live right here on Facebook. We'll also have a podcast. So For us on DawgNation Daily, we'll treat it as a regular Monday, even though it's obviously a game day. And what a game day it'll be. Y'all have fun. We'll see you then. Go Dogs. Bye, Bookie. Wait.